Sisters, brothers, and friends, on behalf of the Manitoba Federation of Labour, made up of over 30 unions representing over 130,000 workers in every region of our province, I bring you greetings and a message of solidarity. I'd be remiss if I didn't start off echoing and acknowledging what others have already spoken about, that our province, along with Ontario and Saskatchewan, are facing devastating wildfires and seeing mass displacement and evacuees needing supports and services like never before. Our thoughts are with them, and unions have been making donations through Red Cross, which both the provincial government is matching the first $15 million raised, and the feds are also matching the first $35 million raised. I understand that COPE has made some contributions towards helping folks through that fund, and very much appreciate it. I want to also start off, you're all facing north. Unless you're at the head table, you're facing south. There was a lot of confusion yesterday, so I thought I'd straighten out our directions. Portage and Main is right over there. And I thought I'd also like to speak briefly to an issue that's happening here in Manitoba right now. The operating engineers, there's a group of them that have been on strike for their 10th week right now at Battlefield Rentals. There's about 30 members there. They've been putting in 8-hour day shifts, 5 days a week. The solidarity is very strong with that group, but they're dealing with an employer that's refusing to come back to the table, an employer that's refusing to recognize seniority, an employer that won't give paid sick days, and that's underpaying their mechanics by over $8 an hour. It is shameful. They've applied for binding arbitration, and that's at the Labour Board right now. They will likely get that within the next 2 weeks. That'll be there, but I know that on the line, that's a long time to be out on the line. So I was wondering if you could all together humor me for a moment. And I'm going to hit record on my phone and say that operating engineers of Manitoba, there is a message that I'd like you to hear from COPE members across this country. And then I'm going to turn the phone and I'm going to go across the room. And if you can do a so, solidarity 3 times, I'll pan the room, and that will be a message we'll make sure we deliver to those members. So if you can stand up with me, I'm going to ask that question or announce that that's what we're about to do, and then I'm going to pan the room, okay? Operating engineers, here's a message from COPE members across the country. Excellent. Thank you very much. I know the members on the line will really appreciate that. I know we're all closely watching CPW and their renewed negotiations as well, and we'll be there for their struggle in whatever way they need support. Before I go on talking about the state of things here in Manitoba, I wanted to reflect, like Annette and Melissa did yesterday, about the Winnipeg 1919 general strike. Melissa told you that about 30,000 workers walked off the job. That's absolutely true, but I think it's really important to put that in context. The population of the city was about 175,000 at the time, which meant the workforce was about 40 or 50,000 workers, and less than 10,000 workers had a union. But 30,000 workers walked off the job in solidarity. It's also worth noting that the plan was for the strike to start in the afternoon, but the sister operating engineers at 11 o'clock that morning, I think they had enough, and they pulled the plug and started the strike early, with sisters leading the strike that day, as they often do in our movement. People were pissed. Wages had fallen way behind, prices had gone way up, veterans had returned to high unemployment, and people had had enough. And that spoke to the strike that went on for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. The police force at first were ready to go on strike with the workers, and the strike committee said, no, we need police services. Please stay on the job. So they returned to their jobs, only to be fired because they were sympathetic to the strikers, and they were replaced with thugs who were given armbands and wooden batons, who were really set up as authorized strike breakers to go out and do things. It's worth noting as well that the strike leaders near the end of the strike were all put under arrest. They were put in jail. And that was leading right up into towards the Bloody Saturday that we talked about, a day that after 6 weeks of the strike going on and streetcars having not been seen for 6 weeks, during a peaceful, silent march put on by supportive veterans, a streetcar suddenly appeared on the scene and started driving towards where the parade was. And then people went out and tipped that streetcar over and set it alight. It's still a bit of a debate today whether those were provocateurs or actually strikers that tipped that streetcar over or not. But there's a monument, as Melissa pointed out, to that streetcar, of a slightly tipped over streetcar across from City Hall, that's a permanent reminder of that day and what happened there. Because that's, regardless of how that came about, it was very clear that there was a plan for a reaction to what happened when that streetcar got tipped. And that's when the mounted police came charging down the streets, where those thugs with the batons came out of all the alleyways and chased and cornered and beat people. 2 were shot and died later, and many, many more were beaten. And the strike was called off, as Annette mentioned, shortly after that, because of the threat of violence to workers. The militia had been called in and were starting to set up on street corners, and the strike leaders thought, well, there's too much, A, they're in jail right now, and B, there's much too much violence that's starting to build up and occur. So the strike was called off, and we didn't get the living wage we were asking for. We didn't get to reduce our 10-hour workday or our 6-day work week. That wasn't reduced. We didn't get the things that we were fighting for or asking for. But often people who point that out end the story there, and I was really pleased Annette didn't end the story there, because that's really where the story, I think, begins. And that's that people woke up. Even though we didn't win that day, it reminded us, well, it's important to fight for good collective agreements. Who is in government matters. Who makes laws and raise worker standards matters. So strike leaders were put on trial and given between 6 months and 2 years. But while behind bars, strike leaders were elected into the legislature and parliament, because you can't lock up an idea. The CCF was formed, as Annette indicated, and later they talked to the CLC about merging and creating the new Democratic Party. Commissions were struck to look at living and working conditions in Winnipeg, and things started to get better. Workers elected politicians that were workers themselves to pass legislation to make life better for everyday working families. We have that streetcar monument as an art piece. We have a giant mural on the side of the Union Center. In the winter, its bright orange background makes it stand out in our whole gray and white kind of landscape that we have. We have a play that was produced, a movie called Stand. We have books and graphic novels, and we are very proud of our labor history and the collective understanding of the long-term wins of strike leaders, and it really matters. People being involved in politics matters. And more people thought joining a union was an option to have a voice in the workplace, and our labor movement has continued to grow. In fact, our labor movement in Manitoba continues to grow. The Federation of Labor in 2009 had 95,000 members, and despite us losing Unifor, about 10,000 Unifor members, our federation today is over 130,000 members strong. Hear, hear. Our Federation of Labor staff team, we're a small group, but a mighty one. We're only 6 people. 2 are COPE members, Al and Louie, who we wouldn't function without their commitment and dedication to our office. And we certainly punch above our weight class. We're the political arm of the provincial labor movement, working closely with affiliates to mobilize members, elect a worker-friendly government, and work to get legislation that makes life better for working families. And I'd been remiss with my history flashback to not say, welcome to Manitoba, Treaty 1 territory, home of the most popular premier in the country and Canada's first First Nation premier, Wab Kinew, a proud New Democrat. And welcome to the province with the strongest anti-scab and card check certification in Canada. It's never been easier to organize new workplaces, and our bargaining position has never been stronger since employers can no longer simply replace us in the event of a work stoppage. We fight for strong collective agreements, and we fight for legislative change all the time, but we don't always take the time to celebrate our victories. So in addition to anti-scab and single-step certification, we have some others to celebrate. A return in Manitoba to free and fair collective bargaining. No more court cases over wage freeze legislation from the last Conservative government. Is bargaining still tough? Yes. But I'd much rather argue about how much we catch up and how much we're keeping up with inflation than being offered zeros. We've seen real staff increases in healthcare. Is it enough? No, we need more. But after years of losing positions and seeing contracting out, staffing levels are on the rise and we continue to see growth there. New legislation, first of its kind in Canada, that defines psychological health in the Health and Safety Act and holds employers to account for prevention for workers' mental well-being. We think this can be a real game changer in forcing employers to start taking mental health and workplace mental health injuries much more seriously. We've seen a return of our apprenticeship ratios back to 1-to-1 to keep workers safe and provide a high training standard. And we replaced an anti-worker. They were with Merit Contractors, their former executive director. He was the neutral chair of the apprenticeship board. He's out. The female, Tanya Paulson, head of the Manitoba Building Trades, is the new chair of the apprenticeship board, which is great. And we've got a number of labor people serving on boards, like our public insurance system, our workers' compensation board, our hydro board, our labor board, our pension board. This government understands talking to the MFL and having affiliate voices in those boardrooms and at those tables matters and is taking steps to make that happen. I get to co-chair the Premier's Business and Jobs Council, PB&J, a great acronym, for our French friends Beurre de Cacahuète et Jolie. Did I say that quite right? Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, it's associated with that. So having Labour as a co-chair there really allows us to mitigate the business lobby that all too often leave workers behind. And speaking of leaving workers behind, I also want to thank you talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion yesterday. Our provincial government recently amended the Human Rights Code to include gender expression. I was one of only 6 people registered to speak to the bill the other week. And then we got word that all of a sudden 17 other people registered. And we kind of got a sense of what those other people registering were coming to say. So we put the call out to our affiliate unions, to our allies in the communities, and all of a sudden 67 people were registered to speak to that bill, with the MFL and other affiliates giving submissions to support and encourage our government in making Manitoba a safer place for everyone. How someone could stand against a law that prohibits discrimination is beyond me, but they will never stand as tall as supporters like our labor movement defending and standing up for workers along with an NDP government prepared to do the right thing and enshrine more rights for our sisters, brothers, and friends. And while it's good to celebrate and see some of these changes, there's always more we want our governments to do, so I won't always just be a cheerleader for them and let them off the hook. On the health and safety front, workplace violence has grown by 400% in the last 10 years. Healthcare, education, social services, and many other workplaces are seeing a huge rise in workplace violence, and much more needs to be done to keep workers safe, and more importantly, to deal with those root causes, which we know are poverty issues, our mental health issues, our addictions issues. They all need much more attention. And another campaign that we're told is working, but we haven't seen it yet, is our menstrual products, free menstrual products in the workplace campaign. So Stephanie, who's our COPE member at the Winnipeg Labour Council, has postcards that if you'd like to sign, the postage is paid, and or we could collect them and hand deliver, but we are pushing hard to get this. It makes no sense to me that you have to provide toilet paper and soap, and you even have to provide a trash can for menstrual products, but not the menstrual products themselves. That's shameful, discriminatory, and needs to change, and we're pushing our government to make that change. And the WCB has an act review now. Workers' compensation boards, worker safety insurance board, or whatever it might be called in your region. I know we all know of it because we all have problems with it. That's actually my home workplace, don't throw things. They are unionized workplaces, but they need a lot of changes to their systems. And the act review is up right now, so we are looking at dealing with psychological injuries and making changes to make sure that if you're hurt at work, whether it be a mental health injury or a physical injury, you get the supports and coverage you deserve. We're looking at challenging the role that their healthcare advisors who are in contract with WCB play. All too often you see your own personal doctor and then they send your file to someone who may never even see you, and that medical opinion seems to matter more. It makes no sense whatsoever. We want more fines for employers and for them to be scaled to the payroll system. The fines, when they have a cap of $3,000, are meaningless to companies who employ thousands of workers. In fact, they just think of that as the cost of doing business. So we want to deal with aggressive return to work plans and many other issues, and we're canvassing affiliates for the priorities that you want to see us fight for change. Similarly, we see the Pension Act review is about to be called. There's a discussion paper that's been circulated. We've pulled together labor voices to see how we can strengthen and protect our pension plans and get even more people enrolled in them to have security in their retirement. And we've participated in consultations on sick notes. Almost every other province has implemented laws that limit when a sick note can be asked for by an employer. In Manitoba, we have no such limitations as yet. Makes no sense whatsoever that if I stay home for a day because I have the flu, that I have to then take another day off to go wait at a doctor's office for a few hours for them to say, "Why are you here?" "Well, last week I was sick for a day." "Oh, so you're telling me you were sick?" "Yep, I need a note." "Okay, Kevin told me he was sick." Like, how the hell was that a good use of the doctor's time or my time or anyone's time? They should be banned. And minimum wage should be a living wage. Our former premier, here. Our former Frankenstein premier, Brian Pallister, set a minimum wage law that says at most it can go up is by inflation. And Cabinet can pause that if they think that's too hard on businesses. So that's bullshit. And that we need a new law that says that they don't have to take our definition of living wage or even CCPA's work that defines it, but a poverty reduction committee of Cabinet should involve poverty experts, academics, business and labor, and figure out what is a living wage, and then we need a real plan to get there. Because, and 72% of Manitobans agree with us, we surveyed them recently, but it's shameful that on October 1st, our minimum wage is only going up 20 cents to $16. So we're pushing hard, and it'll continue to until we get that minimum wage to be a living wage. And as we brace for the impact from the orange menace to our south, his weird tariff and trade war, and now his new battle with his best bud there, Elon, we need to keep making sure that we're investing in public services and supports that workers and their families need, that they're going to be affected. Staffing levels in healthcare and public services are down, and we need to boost them to be there for working families when they need them. And we can't allow harmonizing regulations to become a race to the bottom, especially when it comes to health and safety and training standards, and we need to keep our eye as we enter these new interprovincial trade agreements that isn't a sneaky way for them to lower our standards. We need to raise things to the highest standard. So there's no end of work for us to encourage and push our government to do more for working families. We can do that. We can do that through our union, through our labor councils, through our federation, and through the CLC. Together, we can make these changes a reality. Together, we are stronger. I want to thank all of you for your activism, leadership, and for being such strong voice and fighters for public services, for union members, for workers. You don't always get a thank you for your extra work as a steward or a committee member or a president of your local. I know the extra hours and hard work you put in are very much appreciated by your members, even when they don't say thank you. So to each and every one of you, I want to say thank you for standing up for workers. The MFL and our labor movement here stands with you. Together, we are stronger. Have a great convention. Thank you.